Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second annual BLAS to Oz launch. My name is Valerie Pringle, and I want to start by acknowledging that I am speaking to you from Toronto, Ontario, which is the traditional territory of many First Nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. This topic resonates very strongly with me. I was a volunteer with the Trans-Canada Trail for 20 years, working very hard to build and connect this magnificent national icon across our country. I finished my term as the chair of the Trans-Canada Trail Foundation Board last fall, but I'm also chair of the Center for Addiction and Mental Health Foundation. And for the last 15 years, I've been working with them, involved in raising money and awareness to improve care and access to mental health services and into research into mental illness and addiction. And I've always known that these two causes, which I have chosen to support and promote, are not unrelated. And we know that getting outside in nature and getting exercise is so beneficial to our physical and mental health. We know it makes us feel better. And as we say at CAMH, mental health is health. So I am very delighted to be part of this program again with the Trans-Canada Trails Winter Wellness, helping people turn their blahs, and man, oh man, there have been a lot of blahs, and we want to turn them into Oz. Winter itself is a difficult time for a lot of people because of social isolation, but with COVID, man, oh man, so tough. So, we know there are real benefits to spending time outdoors. And we remind people, of course, that if you are outdoors, you do so safely and responsibly, respecting the local public health directives. But we've got a wonderful group with us today that are going to be talking about this and bringing some personal reflections and some science to it, and some statistics, which are quite remarkable. So, I will introduce them all, and then we'll get to meet them as the hour goes through. Dr. Melissa Lamb is the founder and director of Park Prescriptions. Fatimah Mulla is a Kids Help Phone Counsellor, and Eleanor McMahon is the president and CEO of the Trans-Canada Trail. So they'll all be with us and talking to us. Sponsors we love. Who doesn't love sponsors? Parks Canada, of course, is Trans-Canada Trail's great partner. The BLAS to Oz contest sponsors, Columbia Sportswear. We all know there's no bad weather, only bad clothing, so that we're delighted to partner with Columbia and get warmly dressed so that we can get outside and enjoy the benefits of doing that. The other thing I'll just remind you of is that we can answer your questions if you have them. You can get them ready. You can ask them via the live stream chat here. You can go to the tctrail.ca website and post them there. And if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or LinkedIn, we'll be monitoring for questions there too. So we'll get to that toward the end, so you've got some time. But if you have any questions, we welcome them. So my pleasure to introduce now again Eleanor McMahon, who is the president and CEO of the Trans-Canada Trail. She joined us 2 years ago, I think, as the pandemic began. But Eleanor has 30 years of experience in the private, public, and not-for-profit sectors. She was Ontario's Minister of Tourism, Culture and Sport, as well as President of Treasury Board in Ontario. And she is an active transportation enthusiast and advocate. So lovely to see you, Eleanor. Hello.
Thank you, Valerie. So lovely to see you. And you're such a bright spot to us at the Trans-Canada Trail. And I'm so glad you started today's conversation, coming as you always do from a place of personal passion, because I just want to thank and recognize you and all our guests today. But you really encouraged us to embrace this opportunity, Valerie, to host and convene this conversation about how trail use, how being outdoors really is health, really is our mental health. And the other, of course, important connection to that is Canadians telling us that they're out on the trail now more than ever. So thank you. I wanted to acknowledge you, and I also wanted to acknowledge that I'm coming to you from Ottawa today, which is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation, and we want to pay respect to them today in all ways, and thank and recognize them, and of course, all of the people from across the country that are joining us for this important and I think really timely conversation today.
Well, you could tell last year, Eleanor, because it's a really good idea to kind of bring out the focus and get people to really think about getting outside. And, last winter was almost even worse with COVID and lockdowns at this point. But you did it again because obviously it did touch people and it was successful.
Yes, and we are the stewards of the longest trail in the world. We are so extraordinarily fortunate to really be in the place of stewarding this incredible asset. And what brings us joy is knowing that it has become a lifeline for Canadians during the pandemic. We're excited to bring the Blahs to Oz campaign back this year. It was initially a response, as you point out, to the pandemic, to people's social isolation, to some polling that we did, Valerie. We asked Canadians to really confirm what we were seeing. We work with 500 trail groups across the country, and they were telling us, and those of us who are fortunate enough to be on the trail every day like me, and as you are, we see it in our own communities. But when we polled Canadians, they told us, yes, I'm using trails 50% more now. And then when we asked them why, they said 95%. Yeah, it is. It's really incredible. And I hope that, that this is the silver lining in this terrible, terrible cloud over the last 2 years, that trail use is up, and it warms our heart to see Canadians using the trail, because that's why you and so many others achieved connection in 2017, was because you knew that it was so important. And now to see so many Canadians on it, and for reasons to combat their mental health enhancement, when 95% of Canadians tell us that they're out on the trail more often because of their mental health, and 100% of young people between the ages of 16 and 24 told us, we're out on the trail more often because our mental health needs enhancing, and it's really why it's so wonderful to have Fatimah here today.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think people are more and more making that connection about getting outdoors and getting exercise. And I get it when you say 100%, honestly, mm-hmm. in that age group, that's so wonderful. That's such a powerful statistic.
It gives me hope for the future that those young people are getting out more often, and that those are the kind of healthy habits for life that are so important to build when you're younger. And so that gives us encouragement, because that's why we're here. What really inspires us at the Trans-Canada Trail as staff is to really continue to enhance an asset that those before us created and engendered. And now we have this opportunity to make sure that it remains vital, because we've seen how it's created this connection. Canadians want to connect to nature now more than ever, and it's become a vital connection to their neighbors, to people in their own community, to businesses that they want to support when they can, when they're open. And those small businesses have really suffered. So everyone, I think, is thinking, or so many Canadians, I want to buy local. I want to be out on my trail. I want to support the local coffee shop that's in my neighborhood, because they are a vital part of my health and well-being. And I think, again, this silver lining opportunity means that so many of us are spending more time at home. And, quite often, depending on where you are in the country, you're working in the same place as you are living. For so many of us, your children are home from school. So many people are living in spaces that weren't built for that kind of 24/7 sort of closeness, and wanting to get outside and really just blow off some steam, change the channel, reset our mental health is really what the trail has become for so many people. And that brings us tremendous joy. I've been doing some reading. There's a Canadian-born neuroscientist named Lisa Feldman Barrett, and she wrote a great book called The Secret Life of the Brain. And she talks about how these days especially demands on us whether it's, again, the lack of sleep, which seems to be an issue for so many people now, the doom scrolling on social media, which can sometimes be so harmful, and, challenges with exercise, with gyms closed. It drains our resources and it drains our bank and makes us feel vulnerable. And so she talks about balancing the budget by putting more good stuff in. And that's what the Blas to Oz campaign is all about. Share your joy, get out on the trail, share your images with us, go to our website, tctrail.ca, enter some contests, and we've got all kinds of exciting opportunities for people to really share that joy and be inspired by other Canadians who are doing the same.
Well, you've got a perfect example of that, haven't you? Joy and positivity on the trail.
Absolutely. Gurdeep Pander is a joy spreader from the Yukon. A wonderful Canadian who, I defy anyone to look at his social media, to watch his videos and not be joyful immediately and instantaneously joyful. This wonderful man, we approached him and he agreed to be part of our campaign. We have launched a video with him of him doing a Bhangra dance on the trail in the Yukon, right by our sign, or one of our signs. It's marvelous. And that sort of joy is really become infectious. And that was, again, part of the reason that we started this campaign. We want to be that place where Canadians come to find joy, to connect safely with each other, because, again, the science told us early on in the pandemic that being outdoors was safer. And that was really, for the Trans-Canada Trail, music to our ears, because it meant that we could see it coming. The trail use was going to increase because people were flocking to opportunities where they could be outdoors. I myself, I can't go to my neighbors' homes, but I can see them outside. I can see them on the trail. We can say hello, masks on if they're close, and then keeping our distance. But at least it gives us that chance to connect. And that's really what the Trans-Canada Trail is all about at the end of the day, I think, is that vehicle for connection, Canadians connecting to nature and to one another. And so, again, this campaign, I think, has resonated. Gurdeep has done his video. You can see it on our website. And we've got a great contest with our sponsor.
Can we see Gurdeep here?
I think we can. I think we've got a video that we'd like to share. Let's set that up, shall we?
We love Trans-Canada Trail.
He is so wonderful and he is so joyful. So you're saying to people, if they post videos like Gurdeep's of dancing on the trail, or that's part of the Blas to Oz campaign, and they can win stuff? Woohoo!
They sure can. Our lovely sponsors from Colombia have put together a fabulous prize package, and it's valued at over $600. So we invite Canadians to get out on the trail, dance like Gurdeep, share your image, bring joy to each other, and in the process, you can be eligible to win this fabulous prize package. So if there wasn't incentive enough, there's another incentive to get out on the trail, spread your joy, dance like Gurdeep. And, again, we've got experts on the panel today, clinicians who are going to talk more about the science behind exercise and sport. But for us, it is about that, but it's also about the joy and spreading that.
It's perfect. Anyway, we'll come back to you, Eleanor. I'm going to move now to, as you mentioned, the science. Melissa Lem, who is the founder and director of Park Prescriptions for the BC Parks Foundation. She's a clinical assistant professor in the Department of Family Practice at the University of British Columbia, family physician who's practiced in BC and the Northwest Territories, and president-elect of the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment. Dr. Lem, hello.
Hi, Valerie. Hello. Hi, Valerie, and everyone out there across the country. I want to acknowledge that I'm joining you today from the traditional and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations in Vancouver, and I'm committed to continuing to work to connect people to nature across this country to continue the work that Indigenous peoples have done since time immemorial to steward and protect these lands and waters.
Well, this is obviously an enormous passion of yours and something that you've been working on for a long time. So tell me, how did it begin that you started thinking about nature as a pillar of health?
Well, this was just over 10 years ago. And what happened was I moved from rural practice in Northwest BC down to downtown Toronto. And I remember when I worked in Northern BC, I was doing emergency shifts. I was delivering babies all night. I did acute care medicine. It was pretty stressful work, but I loved it. I loved being up there. I loved being in nature. And so when I moved to Toronto, the work was much less stressful. So I was doing outpatient medicine at the University of Toronto with students who are generally healthy, no, babies being delivered in the middle of the night. And I found myself much more stressed. And I remember sitting in my apartment, looking out at the street, seeing a little square of sky with the CN Tower, hearing streetcars going by and thinking to myself, wow, I'm really stressed. Like, what is it? Why do I feel stressed even though the work is so much easier? And then at that moment, I thought, I think it's because I'm missing nature. And so, I'm a family physician. I practice evidence-based medicine. And I thought to myself, this intuitive feeling that I have, it can't be true unless it's backed up by research. So I did a literature review and I found this incredible trove of research about the health benefits of nature that I had no idea about, even though I was so passionate about being outside myself. And so I thought from that moment forward, it's my mission to educate my patients and fellow physicians and the medical community about this. And then fast forward to about 10 years later when we founded Park Prescriptions, or PARX, with the BC Parks Foundation.
So you moved back to the West Coast, so tell me about Parks Prescriptions.
I know, it's PARX. So it is first national nature prescription program. And we launched in November 2020 in BC to begin with. And then we've actually rolled out across the country over the last year. So we spread to Ontario and Manitoba and Saskatchewan. And right now we have PARX teams working in every province and territory across the country to roll out by the end of the year. So what you do is, if you're a licensed healthcare professional, you can register on our website, www.parkprescriptions.ca, to prescribe through our program. And then we'll send you kind of a kit and a package, and you can use our materials to prescribe nature to your patients for their health and well-being.
Well, how does nature prescribing work?
Well, we do have a standard recommendation in our program that you spend at least 2 hours in nature each week and at least 20 minutes each time. And that's based on the latest research that came out in 2019, around the time when we were launching the program, just before we were launching the program. And so what we emphasize is that you customize the nature prescription to your patient. So as a family physician, I spend a lot of time with my patients. I know their medical history. I know the neighborhoods they live in. I know their capabilities. And so I work with them to figure out how they can fit nature into their everyday lives, because it's really that everyday nature that boosts our well-being. So whether it's, instead of sitting in a coffee shop with a friend, drinking your lattes, go outside, take it to go and walk on a trail with them, or spend 15 minutes outside on your lunch hour, sitting on a park bench instead of sitting inside doom scrolling, as was mentioned earlier, on social media. So there's so many different ways that you can add a little bit of nature time into your day, and the science backs it up that it's good for our health.
Well, but the science, what does it say? What are the trees or the plants or the air? What's it doing to our brains?
Well, there are two major theories for why science is good for our brains. And the first one is called attention restoration theory. So when we spend time in cities, they're full of hard edges, lights, traffic, crowds, things that we have to navigate around. And what this does is it depletes our powers of conscious attention, and it depletes our attention. So what happens is that our fatigue increases, our irritability increases, and we just can't focus as well. Whereas when you spend time in nature, it's actually a source of soft fascination. So it's interesting, but it doesn't require you to constantly focus your attention to move around obstacles. So what that does is it restores our powers of attention and reduces that irritability and fatigue and makes us feel better. The second theory is called stress reduction theory. And that speaks to how after a stressful event, spending time in nature can actually help us recover faster and improve our resilience. And this comes down, scientists think, to evolution. So if you think about it, when you spend time in biodiverse natural areas, they have everything an early human would need to survive. So sources of water, food, trees you could climb up to escape from and look for predators. And so when these early humans spent time in these biodiverse areas, their brains grew to want to spend time and be less stressed in nature. And so they've passed on those nature-loving genes to future generations. And that's why our brains are really hardwired to want to spend time outside. And what's also really interesting is when you spend time in green spaces, you're also breathing in something that's really good for you. So there's something called phytoncides, which are volatile organic compounds that are released by trees and plants. Just imagine the smell of a pine or a cedar forest on a warm summer day, or even in the wintertime. You're breathing in good for you chemicals. So basically, there is research showing that when you're exposed to phytoncides, this actually boosts your immune function. It increases your level of immunoproteins. It actually increases your activity of natural killer cells, which fight off bad viruses and bacteria. So from kind of your brain to your body and even your sense of smell, being outside in nature is great for you on so many different counts.
I remember the first time I heard the expression forest bathing, the Japanese prescriber implies the necessity of being in nature. And I thought, it was just like, of course, we need to forest bathe. We need that. We just kind of know it, but it's so interesting that more and more work is going into the science. Tell me about your patients and how they react to your prescriptions.
They actually react really well. So you know what's funny is the first time I prescribed nature to a patient, I was nervous about it. So I was in Toronto again. I read evidence behind the health benefits of nature. I thought I need to recommend it for the first time. And so I still remember this patient. He was actually from Vancouver. He was a student, and he had ADHD. And he came to me because his symptoms were getting worse. And so I talked to him about what he did recreationally, what he did with his time. And it came out that when he was in Vancouver, he spent a lot more time outdoors by the ocean, in the forest, basically enjoying nature. But when he moved to Toronto, it's kind of like a concrete jungle. You can find parks, there's nature in ravines and by the waterfront, but it's a bit harder to find.
Wonderful Trans-Canada Trail by the waterfront.
Yeah, that's right. And so what he found was that I think it was really his brain missing nature, which was what caused him to worsen his ADHD symptoms. So at that moment, I didn't actually write it down. I recommended nature time along with other lifestyle interventions. And instead of kind of looking at me like I was like a crunchy granola hippie, he actually really nodded his head and he said, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks for that recommendation. And I'll do that from now on. And his symptoms did actually improve over time.
Mm-hmm. And what about other doctors? Are physicians sort of picking up on this, or do they think you're a crunchy granola hippie woman?
Well, I am a little crunchy granola, but even so, Valerie, it's been fantastic. So right now across the country, we have over 1,300 registered prescribers to prescribe nature. And so these are, again, licensed healthcare professionals. Most of them are doctors and nurses. And again, we're working with teams across the country to roll out everywhere by the end of 22. And we were actually recognized by the World Health Organization at COP26 in its special report on climate change and health as a way to inspire protection and restoration of nature as the foundation of our health. So we're getting some global attention too, which is great.
Wow, that's fabulous. Okay, well, we will continue our conversation. I want to bring Fatimah in a second. First, I just want to remind people to check out the website that we've got, tctrail.ca /blogs to Oz, because there's a lot of content there. Some safety tips from Adventure Smart. TVO Kids has done a video series there about getting kids outside, stories from trail users about what a difference it makes in their lives. And here's an absolutely spectacular one from National Ballet of Canada dancer Guillaume Cote.
My name is Guillaume Cote, and I'm a principal dancer with the National Ballet of Canada, as well as choreographic associate. I'm also the artistic director of Cote Danse, as well as the Festival des Arts de Saint-Sauveur, up in Saint-Sauveur in the beautiful Laurentian Mountains. The pandemic was a very challenging time for us dancers. We truly depend on our physical activity to stay healthy physically, but also mentally. And to my delight, I rediscovered the Trans-Canada Trail. I grew up in northern Quebec, a very rural area. I want to bring that to my children, to the outdoors. The Trans-Canada Trail, I find, is so incredibly precious in downtown because it's a really great place to kind of get away from the craziness and to also get in the habit of getting out and reconnecting with nature, truly. So yeah, it's had a really great and important place in our family. Once you're out there and you're exercising, there's nothing better than having rosy cheeks, being able to feel the air in your lungs. There's no bad weather, only bad clothing. If you dress warmly, I think you'll be rewarded greatly. Your mind and your body will for sure thank you for it. I would say it's so great for your mental health. What's so great is you can pursue whatever activity you like. I've even engaged in dancing on the trail, so you can get quite creative. Enjoy the Trans-Canada Trail and don't be shy. Turn your blahs into ahs on the Trans-Canada Trail.
Brilliant, brilliant, Guillaume. And we're waiting for you to post your videos. I mean, God help us, we won't look like Guillaume Cote dancing on the trail, but we'd love to hear from you and see where your favorite part of the trail is. I'm generally with two very large, smelly old Labradors walking along the trail, along the Niagara River. And that's my little piece of the trail that I do, pretty much every day. And that is wonderful. But you can please post your pictures, #blahs2ahs, #Trans-Canada Trail. So we make sure to see your posts and you get to be part of the contest. Right now, I'd like to introduce you to Fatimah Mulla, who is an addiction and mental health counselor, currently working with Kids Help Phone and Canadian Muslim counseling. She created a nature-based group therapy program called Healing with Nature for BIPOC Muslim women in the Greater Toronto area, and we are delighted that she is with us today. Hello, Fatimah.
Hello, and thank you for having me, Valerie, and hello to everyone tuned in today across Canada. I am speaking to you all from Markham, Ontario, which is the sacred territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and it is home to now many, many diverse Inuit, First Nations peoples, and Métis peoples.
Tell me about your work with Kids Help Phone. What are you doing there, and what are you seeing and hearing at Kids Help Phone?
Yeah. So I work as a mental health counselor at Kids Help Phone and Canadian Muslim Counseling. Kids Help Phone is a 24-hour mental health crisis service that supports youth up to the age of 29. Some of our services include our professional counseling line, which can be accessed by phone and chat. We have our texting support and our Facebook Messenger support.
Sorry to interrupt, Fatimah. I think we have the Kids Help Phone number, which we can put up now, so it might be helpful for people to make a note of that. Sorry, please
That's
continue.
Wonderful. That's totally okay. So that's the number that you will see. That is our professional counseling line, which is 24/7 and anybody can access it. Beyond that, we also have our texting support and our Facebook Messenger support lines that are run by volunteer crisis responders all across Canada. And most recently, we've launched our peer-to-peer online support forums where young people can have a safe space to connect and to provide support to each other in an anonymous and safe fashion following our community safety guidelines. And Canadian Muslim Counseling is a nonprofit organization that provides culturally and religiously informed counseling and therapy services for Muslims across Canada. And then kind of what we're noticing. So we're noticing that kids and youth are struggling a lot right now. There have been many, many big changes that have occurred in their lives in the last couple of years, and they've had to very quickly find different ways to navigate and cope with the stressors that have come up for them. Some of the most common struggles and challenges that we've been hearing about are thoughts around suicide and self-harm, particularly in the evening time. We get a lot of calls around isolation, loneliness. We get calls around grief. We've also been getting a lot of calls around racism and discrimination, a lot around intergenerational trauma, especially with folks being at home more often now with their families and not having perhaps other things that they might be able to do outside of the home. We've been seeing an increase in maybe challenges with addictions, an increase in abuse, many, many challenges with other kind of mental health struggles such as anxiety, depression, maybe even challenges with personality disorders. We've been seeing a lot more challenges with interpersonal relationships, perhaps with caregivers, with parents, with friends, with teachers. And of course, we've also been seeing a lot of calls around exploring sexual identity, having challenges with navigating their sexual identity when kids are at home and may have parents or caregivers that may not be supportive of their sexual orientation or identity. And another thing that I can mention that is very relevant is I get quite a few calls around eco-anxiety, which can manifest as worry or guilt around our current relationship with Earth and the role that humans have had to play in, I guess, the place that our Earth is in at this time. So there's a worry about the future of our planet and ultimately humanity, other animal and other plant life as well. As the American Psychological Association defines it, it's worry about environmental doom. And I find that it's very, very pronounced, especially in millennials and Gen Z, the populations that really kind of are cognitive and really aware of kind of what is going on with our planet and are worried about our future and kind of how we can maybe do some restorative work to help heal our Earth.
Well, we know, these things exist. They're tough.
Mm-hmm.
There's maybe not enough services yet for people that, some people still, deal with stigma, asking for help, getting help, accessing help. All these things are tough. And these issues are complex. And that COVID and being isolated has just made it so much worse. And,
Mm-hmm.
showed the inequities in our world.
Absolutely, yeah. And we've really noticed kind of the impact that COVID has had on Kids Help Phone's service use. We've noticed kind of there was a lot of uncertainty. We didn't know what to expect, of course. No one knew what to expect. We were just kind of thrust into this pandemic. And I guess if I was to talk about kind of what COVID has looked like at Kids Help Phone, we, just in 2020, we had a 137% increase in our service use from 2019, which is over 4.6 million contacts that we had. And kind of broader since March 2020 until now, we've had about 4.9 million contacts. That's 4.9 million young people reaching out from across Canada using our various platforms. So it has been incredible. So we've had a lot of demand, but we've also been able to meet young people where they are, which it's been really, really fantastic to see just how many people have been reaching out and seeking out for support, especially during this challenging time.
Yeah, and it's, obviously, there are complex solutions to these
Mm-hmm.
many complex mental illness and addiction problems. But to talk about the idea of nature and mitigating and improving people's mental health. I mean, can you talk to that and any advice you give?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think spending time and fostering a relationship with nature is really, really important. As Dr. Lem spoke about so many different ways that nature can be beneficial. Spending time in nature is moreover grounding and soothing. A lot of clients that I speak to utilize nature to help them to ground and to soothe and to kind of get away from all of the challenges that may be in their personal lives or at home. So young people can connect with nature to help with emotion regulation, to enhance their positive emotions, to manage or reduce symptoms of anxiety and depression, and mostly just to kind of get away and have a little bit of a break from all the things that may be going on in their personal lives. Furthermore, when we spend time in nature, we become more interested in caring for it. And by engaging in different stewardship or conservation activities on any scale, young people can create for themselves a sense of purpose, hopefulness, and belonging. And that's especially important when young people are experiencing a lot of hopelessness or when they're experiencing thoughts around suicide. This might be a really great way for them to get involved and get connected. So I've also been noticing with my calls at Kids Help Phone or even through my counseling sessions at Canadian Muslim Counseling that a lot of my clients are open to seeking healing and wellness outdoors, especially during this pandemic when there are not a lot of other options that may be available and may be safe. So that's what I really would say is that get to my clients to get outdoors, to get outside, and to allow themselves to utilize all the healing benefits that nature has to offer for us and the ways that we might even be able to support and kind of heal our earth to help us to create a sense of meaningfulness and belonging.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me bring Melissa Lem and Eleanor McMahon back into the conversation here, and you guys can talk to each other too because you're all on the same page. It's interesting, Fatimah, that you had been part of this program. I think Melissa and Eleanor will be with those again. I don't see them yet, but I'm sure I will. Anyway, tell me about healing with nature, Fatimah.
So I was realizing with all of my calls with the individuals that I was talking to at both the places that I work that there was a lot of isolation, there was a lot of loneliness, and the pandemic really exacerbated that for a lot of people. So the people that were already experiencing loneliness were experiencing it at a much higher scale or just feeling it a lot more, especially with the pandemic. So I decided that I wanted to create a program that combined two of my loves. One is just I love groups and I love getting people together in a sense of community, and I love being outdoors. I find it very therapeutic and healing for myself. So I started a weekly group called Healing with Nature, where I brought 10 Muslim women along with me, a generally underrepresented group in utilizing outdoor spaces that accompany me for 6 weeks to learn how they might be able to foster a meaningful connection with nature, and most importantly, to inspire a sense of eco-responsibility and stewardship to the waterways and the local land that is around us. So that's what I've been working on. It's been really incredible. We're on week 4 now of 6. And I've had really, really positive feedback, and I hope to continue these groups with different women and continue to expand my work with Muslims for Earth.
Well, and none of this, I guess, Melissa, as you listen, is a surprise to hear, right? Melissa, sorry.
Oh no, I fell prey to the whole mute thing. Yeah, so as I mentioned before, there's this massive body of evidence behind the health benefits of nature. So I would say probably some of the strongest evidence that we have is in the area of mental health, like that area that Fatimah's work. So another really interesting area, main area that we have evidence in is with kids' health. So I think the work that Kids Help Phone is doing and the work that you do, Fatimah, to connect women and kids to nature through your work is incredible.
Yeah. And Eleanor, I mean, do people have different perceptions of nature? Do we think, and I don't know, any of you can answer this question. I mean, you talked, Fatimah, about Muslim women on an underrepresented group. Are there certain people who don't take advantage of the outdoors as much, who we can work more to encourage? And, start with Eleanor, and any of you can weigh in on that.
Valerie, that's a really great question. And Fatimah, I'm so inspired by the work that you're doing. It's really such a pleasure to give voice to all of that amazing work. And it's truly inspiring. Here at the Trans-Canada Trail, Valerie, we feel like we have a tremendous opportunity and responsibility to ensure that the trail is accessible for all, making sure that it's an asset that's safe for people, giving them that place to convene and a sacred space to so many to heal themselves. And so, admittedly, we have work to do. We're on a journey now to encourage all Canadians, from new Canadians to all Canadians generally, who may feel as though the trail isn't a safe place for them, because acknowledging that, I think, is a good place to start. And we have in the past acknowledged that, and we are working on a DEIA strategy to ensure that the trail is a safe space. The other thing that we're doing is on the accessibility front, we're working with an amazing Canadian company called Access Now, a technology company that's created an open source platform for Canadians to really feed into us, especially those with mobility challenges, to be on the trail, to record their images, to give us feedback, to ensure that we're always focused on making the asset as accessible as it can truly be. And starting last year, we were honored to be joined by the Canadian Paralympic Committee. And those athletes, and by the way, with the Olympics coming up on a general point, so many Canadian athletes train on the Trans-Canada Trail across the country, and we know that. So we're inspired by that as well. But Access Now has really helped us to understand the importance of maintaining a trail that's accessible for all. And the Canadian Paralympians, through the technology, have given us really valuable feedback that we then share with our municipal partners to make the trail more accessible. So it's a journey for us. And that's why the conversation we're having today, I think, is so incredibly important and inspired by your work, Fatimah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Melissa, you've spoken to this too, that whole idea of, reducing barriers or people's perception of getting out in nature. So, how do you work with that?
Something that we often hear from people is the major barriers are, number one, transportation. So sometimes it's hard to get to these big natural spaces if they're not close to where you live. And another one is the cost of entry sometimes to these places. So actually just 2 days ago, Park Prescriptions announced a major partnering agreement with Parks Canada, where now licensed healthcare professionals in any province where we've launched can prescribe adult discovery passes that are good for a whole year to reduce that barrier to entry to Parks Canada administered sites. So it's a really exciting.
That's a great idea.
Development. Yeah, where doctors and nurses and other health professionals can now prescribe actual nature passes to their patients. And I think it really, the research shows that when you write something down, it increases your patient's motivation to do it. But now we can really underline that message with something tangible that can then reduce that barrier to access. So we're asking that prescribers prioritize people for whom cost might be a barrier to accessing or to buying the pass and accessing nature, and also people who live nearby to Parks Canada parks or national historic sites or marine conservation areas, because we want people outside. We want them incorporating nature into their everyday routines to maximize those health benefits.
Mm-hmm. Now, again, all of you can speak to this, but Eleanor mentioned earlier, COVID silver linings. It's hard to imagine, but there are, and this is sort of been one. Tell me a little bit about how you perceive that COVID has reinforced the importance of nature and getting out, and how important it is to our physical and mental health. Do you want me to? I'll start with Fatimah. Why don't you talk first?
Yeah. So for me, it's been I didn't have a lot of things I could do. All of my hobbies and meeting people, that just kind of came to an abrupt end, and that was really hard for me. And I was thrust into this role of working from home, which I'd never really done before. So for me, it was spending a lot of time outside in nature, exploring trails near my house, and most importantly, we took all of our family activities and the things that we would do, we took it outside. And so we would center all of our family time around nature. And that's how I connected with, my mom, my sisters. We would just, every weekend, we would just go out and find a new trail and explore. And it was really, really lovely. So I think that was one of my favorite things about COVID. If you can say silver linings, that would be it for me.
That's for sure. And Melissa?
For me, I think it really underlined that research-backed idea that nature is what you make of it. So often, I love to go camping with my family. I love to go to distant places in BC or down the West Coast to check out all the new beaches and gorgeous coastlines. But we were told to stay in the Lower Mainland in Vancouver. And so what we ended up doing was repeatedly going back to Jericho Beach, for example, and going back to Pacific Spirit Park, which is within walking distance of our home. And I think just rediscovering our local nature and realizing how beautiful it was and how different it was every time, and how we could really have kind of a magical nature experience together as a family, really made me appreciate our local nature in how it promotes our well-being. So, in some ways, being kind of stuck at home and stuck in our own neighborhood really was a bonus in some ways for our family, because now we're really familiar with the local parks that we have, and we're still enjoying them now.
Yeah, because I don't think, Eleanor, that people will go back or will forget this.
No, it has echoes somehow, Valerie, of a simpler time, if I can say that, where I'll just say one thing, that the silver lining, just to echo Fatimah's observations and Dr. Lem's as well, getting to know my own neighborhood even better, the community around me even better, focusing on my neighborhood. I hardly drove. First of all, because I was at the very beginning of the pandemic, I was isolated to home. I live on my own. And so that's, there's a loneliness and an isolation that's associated with that. I have a wonderful network of friends, and connecting on Zoom is great, but what really strengthened my mental health and my the anxiety that I would sometimes feel from being indoors all the time. I have a dog too, Valerie, as you know. I have an 80-pound Labradoodle. He's very active, and he brings me a lot of joy, and he gets me outside. And everyone in the neighborhood loves him because he's pretty cute. And our friendship has grown too, because we're spending a lot more time together. So that's a really lovely sort of silver lining to this as well, as I'm fortunate enough to be able to have a dog and support him, and the two of us, have strengthened our relationship. But really, it's been that local connection for me. And I'm lucky because 80% of Canadians, as we know, live within 30 minutes of the Trans-Canada Trail. And I am part of that lucky 80%. I live literally 3 minutes from the Trans-Canada Trail, and I'm on it every single day. And so I get that opportunity, and it just inspires me. I have so much gratitude as a consequence of that. So I think, like Dr. Lem, like Fatimah, it's that hyper-local experience of my community, that sense of a simpler time, driving less, which is good for me and good for the environment. And again, these I think are all part of that silver lining that you talked about earlier.
In the sense that, now that people know this, I mean, we know you go back to normal and sometimes routines shift, but I do think that this will stay with us. And I think the connection that people are making more and more between mental, and obviously physical health too, stronger, better, heart healthy, et cetera, all those things, benefits from just getting outside, for a walk or a bike ride or spending some time in nature. You won't forget that.
I don't think so. I mean, I have two folks that live in the clinical realm here on the panel with me today, particularly Dr. Lem. I think growing up at a different time, I, for example, rode my bicycle a great deal. I didn't have a vehicle, drive a car till I was in my late 20s. And I had that gift of healthy habits for life because I learned early on. I walked everywhere as a young person. It enhanced my independence. It enhanced my mental health and well-being, and it created healthy habits for life that are still with me today. And so I'm hoping, as you noted, Valerie, that, again, the silver lining side of the coin, where this has given us the opportunity to, and Fatimah touched on this, to really have those outdoor experiences with family, to think about gathering in a different way and leveraging the opportunity to get outside. And that I'm hoping will stay with us, and I think that's a really good thing.
Okay, I do have a few questions here that people have sent in. So let me start asking some of these. Somebody said they can't dance like Gurdeep, but they thought it was wonderful. Here's a question for Melissa. What are some ways in which we can incorporate nature into our daily lives, particularly people who live in urban settings?
Mm-hmm. Well, what's really interesting is the research shows that we have a meaningful nature experience when we feel like we have. So there is some research showing that when you're in areas with higher biodiversity, that can be better for you. But there are other studies showing that you get those mental health benefits when you feel like you've had a meaningful nature experience. So you can find nature in so many different places: on a corner park in a city, on your balcony with your plants, in your garden. There's research showing that just looking at photos of nature scenes on your walls and listening to birdsong actually improves your mental health compared to not having those around. So I think you can find lots of different ways to incorporate nature into your indoor life. But of course, we want people to head outside as well. So do those things like substituting nature for your venue, when you would do it indoors. So doing your cardio workout on the trail instead of inside the gym, instead of sitting inside a restaurant, going and doing, well, it's winter time now, so it's a little bit cold, but in Vancouver, we could maybe do a picnic outside still right now. But basically going outside for a meal with a friend or a drink with a friend instead of indoors. So it's just adding those little bits of nature time into your routine. And then you can sort of build this circle of friends and family who spend time outdoors. And I think the movement will just build from there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, here's a question for Fatimah. What are some of the tips you share with your callers on how to manage stress?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So stress management is unique to every human. Therefore, whenever I'm working with callers, especially younger callers, I really like to explore their hobbies, their interests, and their skills to determine specific stress management techniques that may be effective for them. I find that a lot of times when callers are calling in, they're looking for something fancy that can help them to cope, or something new or novel that I can teach them that they can utilize. But I find that it's really important to fall back on really simple tasks like breathing or getting creative or listening to to music or taking a walk outside. Those can be sometimes the most effective for most callers. And I find that it doesn't matter so much the technique that we utilize than it does like the actual practice of that skill or that technique. So the more that we practice something, the more that we kind of incorporate it into our lives, the more effective it is as a coping strategy or a stress management strategy, right? That's what I find, anyways.
Mm-hmm. Elder, I've got that's a good question from someone named Paul in Ontario who wants to know who owns the Trans-Canada Trail.
All Canadians own the Trans-Canada Trail. That's part of the beauty of it, isn't it, Valerie? And I thank you, Paul, for the question. And I would go back to, I think it was Dr. Lem mentioned earlier, that part of the barrier to entry can sometimes be cost. The wonderful thing about the Trans-Canada Trail is it's free. Mm-hmm. And when we did our polling, Valerie, if I may just expand on this, a lot of the demographics showed us that people who are living in highly dense urbanized environments, such as you mentioned, Dr. Lem, perhaps understandably, really are craving that access to nature even more because, again, they're in an environment where now more than ever, they could be working from home, their children are home from school, and they're feeling a little closed in. So they're accessing nature. They perhaps don't have a backyard, for example. And so getting out on a trail and accessing a local park and that postage stamp, even if it is, piece of green space can really be a rejuvenating opportunity for them. So Paul, that's a great question. I mean, we are a national non-for-profit organization, as you know, Valerie, that stewards the Trans-Canada Trail. We're funded by the federal government. We're working on the renewal of that funding, little plug, through Parks Canada. And I would say, and I couldn't give this up, Valerie, or miss an opportunity to tell Canadians and those listening that if you're inspired by what you hear today and you want to be part of the Trans-Canada Trail movement, then please go to our website, tctrail.ca, and donate. We would welcome that because our stewardship work doesn't happen without the funds and that we receive and the donations that we get and the support that we receive, because we work with those local trail groups and they need our support every single day. So please donate if you can. Thank you, Valerie. Thank you, Paul.
Absolutely. Please donate if you can. It's because, yeah, we rely on that. And also, yes, partners at different levels of government and all sorts of wonderful corporations and organizations that support. But yeah, this is a grassroots endeavor and that started 1982. So it's not that old, just over, it's 30. Oh my gosh.
It's 30. This is our 30th anniversary, 30th birthday.
Right. Anyway, what a miracle it is. So another question here. It says, have you had a Blaws to Oz moment, life transformation, anecdote of positive effects? Well, I don't know. I will just say I was so happy. Maybe not everybody loves the snow and the cold as much as I do, but a real winter. So, for someone in Niagara and Toronto in the last couple of weeks to have that huge dump of snow and blue skies and cold temperatures to keep it was dreamy walking around in the last little while. It's, it wasn't just, I need to get outside and feel a little better. It was like, let me get outside and I wish I didn't have to come in. So I don't know. Do any of you have a story?
I think I'll go. So my Blaws to Oz moment is almost any time I go outside. So I'm a healthcare professional, a family doctor. I work both in the city and also do rural practice where I do emergency work. And for both me and my colleagues, COVID-19 has been really difficult. And so sometimes with all the other work that I do outside clinical work, it can be hard to find that time to actually head outside. But every single time I go out into nature, I breathe in the fight insides. I see the waves at the beach. I feel so much better. And I think to myself, why didn't I do this earlier in the day? Why didn't I start my day with that? So actually what I've been trying to do is when I drop my son off at school or before work is go for a little walk to the beach, go for a little walk to the park before, just to set up my day in a healthy way. And I find that makes myself feel so much better. So yeah, these days, almost every day, it feels like a Blaws to Oz moment.
Mm-hmm. And Fatimah?
Yeah, I want to echo what Dr. Lem just said. I feel like that every time I go outside too. And as you were asking that question, Valerie, I was thinking about, oh gosh, what could be my Blaws to Oz moment that I want to talk about? And I thought, for me, I think it was last week or last Saturday, we did our group. And I was introducing what you talked about earlier, Valerie, forest bathing to the group and to the women so that we could practice that a little bit in the forest. And we did a little scratch and sniff activity, and there's just something about that that was so fun, smelling all those fighting sides, I guess. As Dr. Melissa mentioned, it was so much fun just going around scratching and sniffing the leaves, or watching the little part of the lake that wasn't frozen, or we got to witness a bird show. All of that, I think, it's so much. Like, it's just beautiful. It's definitely my blessed Oz moment for the week.
Mm-hmm. And Eleanor, do you have one with your dog?
I had one this morning. I'm inspired by my two fellow panelists to share this morning. Just like Dr. Lem, I find that when my day starts with a trail walk, the rest of my day is so much better. I'm better mentally, I'm better physically. I draw on that time together. And of course, Valerie, as you know, I'm someone who's in meetings back to back all day, but I'm also talking a lot during the day. And so this is my opportunity to recharge my batteries and internally reflect. And just this morning, I was out on the trail with the dog, and it was a bit of a cloudy day here in Ottawa, so not the sparkly sunshine that we've had the last little while, and the cold, because those things come together, it seems. And I was with the dog, and I suddenly looked up in the park we were in, and there wasn't another soul, and it was completely quiet. And I just stood still for a moment, and the dog, like on cue, sat. And that doesn't happen because he's a Labradoodle and he's always moving. And the two of us just stopped for a moment, and we just stood still and listened. And I could hear birds, and I thought, oh, what a hopeful sound. Spring is coming. There's birds. Just that forest bathing moment that Dr. Lem mentioned, the opportunity to connect to nature, to just be quiet and in the moment, was really, I know it sounds touchy-feely and all that, but it just, for me, just that resets my inner clock and just gets me going for the day. And when I don't do it, Valerie, I really feel it the rest of the day. I miss it.
Yeah, we do. I even got a day
back to
skiing
science.
last week. It's been 2 years since I skied. I just had so much fun. I was with my girlfriends, and anyway, all those things.
Yeah.
It's not too cold. You just have to convince people it's not too cold, not too slippery, not too difficult. I
was out snowshoeing on the weekend. That's fun too. I was out snowshoeing, and we've got a lot of snow here in Ottawa, like in so many places. And I put on the snowshoes, and it was just a blast. And again, in nature, not far from the house. So fortunate, and it was wonderful.
Well, I want to thank particularly Dr. Lem and Fatimah, Mulla, for what you do. I mean, it reminds us that you're frontline workers during this tough time, and trying to help people through it. And it's, bearing a lot of that burden. So it's not just getting through, it's helping so many others through. So the work you do is so important and so appreciated. And thank you for making the time today, for being with us, because you brought so much to the conversation. So I'll say thank you very much to you. And just to wrap up here with Eleanor, just telling people again how they can get involved in this campaign and have some fun, win some prizes, and maybe feel a little better.
Oh, Valerie, thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you to my fellow panelists for, as you said, really illuminating this conversation. I think what was so wonderful about today is that these are two people, like you said, on the front line of healthcare, and we owe them a tremendous amount of gratitude. But they're really walking the talk. They're telling their patients this is what they should do. And their personal example today, I think, just really illustrates what all of us are feeling, that need to be outside, the benefits of nature, getting out on the trail. So, in closing, I would just want to thank everyone for participating and listening in. You're going to find a recording of this session on our website at tctrail.ca, Trans-Canada Trail, tctrail.ca. And you'll see the Blast to Oz campaign right on our homepage of our website. And click on the resource page. You can see all kinds of tips and advice, shared stories that are really, really inspiring, contests, get out and dance like Gurdeep or Guillaume Cote with that beautiful, graceful jeté on the waterfront trail. Really, how wonderful is that? But even if you're not a dancer in that vein, just show your joy, share it. It will make a difference in so many lives, because people get inspired by that. I do, and I know that other people do too. So we encourage people to go to our website, participate in the contest, Share the photos, share your videos, share your joy, and it's going to help us all get through the rest of the winter. It's Groundhog Day. And the inconclusiveness is that, Wart and Willie said, I'm going to have an early spring, but the other groundhog said we're in for 6 more weeks of winter. So, if we're into the winter, which we probably are, there's lots of time left to enjoy. So go to our website and share that joy with us. And we're just grateful to everyone for participating today. And to you, Valerie, thank you for leading us through it.
You're welcome. So we can end now. I think our time is up. And don't forget, tctrail.ca is the website, Blas is the campaign. Participate, send in your videos, donate, but mainly get out in the trail or get outside. And happy trails to you. I hope you feel better.